Hi, everybody. This is Warren Herman. And so tonight, what I want to speak to you about is the way that intrusive thoughts can derail our understanding of God's voice in our life. And so often we see intrusive thoughts as an experience. And obviously, this is not therapy, this is just thoughts and education and random stuff. We see intrusive thoughts as this experience that people can have in an OCD type mental pattern. And intrusive thoughts are something that are somewhat, they're distressing because they seem to be things that we don't want to think. They're things that we normally wouldn't think. So for example, somebody who has a great fear of, it would be thinking it's terrible if I would do something horrible to my family. They may have the intrusive thought of harming their family members. Or if somebody looks over the side of a building, they may have the intrusive thought of jumping off of the building if they don't have any depression or desire to end their life. They may say, oh, I shouldn't think that. And then they push it away and then they're like, ugh, and they don't want it. The interesting thing in all these experiences, there is this interaction between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, or the, however you might want to phrase that. A lot of times with intrusive thoughts, what happens is that we put a kind of pressure on the unconscious mind. I remember illustrating this with a stress ball, and you could see all these little, you've probably seen the kind that has kind of a kind of opaque outside, and inside it has these little jelly marble things that are inside. It's like a squeezy ball. And if you squeeze the ball, you then can, the surface kind of stretches out and you can kind of see clearly these little marbly things that are inside of it. And then when you let it go, then it becomes opaque again. And our unconscious mind is just like that. The more pressure we put on it, the more we see the thoughts that are potentially inside of it that we don't want to have. So the more I don't want to think about pink elephants, the more I think about pink elephants. The more I don't want to think about judging others, the more I think maybe I'm judging that person. Oh, I don't want that. Why does that thing seem like it's popping out at me? Well, because I'm pushing pressure down on the unconscious mind. It comes out. These thoughts that we don't want come out or come up. And then we think we're generating them. We think we're consenting to them. We think we're thinking them with our will. Instead, we're just kind of doing something wrong with our mental process and making them pop up. And then we're like, why am I feeling it? The appetites move toward it. And you're like, I must want this thought. And you're like, why do I want to judge this person? Why do I want to think this horrible thing? What's going on? The more confused we get. The thing that I also want to share about is that sometimes we want to have certain intrusive thoughts. Maybe we want God to tell us that we are, on the right track. Maybe we want God to give us guidance. Maybe we are, hoping that we'll have a certain feeling so that we'll know that we're doing the right thing. That's also another kind of pressure that we could put on the unconscious mind. And so this might not be a pressure of fear, but it could be a pressure of desire. And so I wanted to share that this could be going on. So for example, if I want to have a calling to be a priest, I may have that pressure kind of on my mind, and then all of a sudden something pops into my mind and I hear a voice that says, you be a priest, But that may just be my unconscious mind that I've squished. It may not be an inspiration. It may just be pressure on the unconscious mind. The same way, we may think, okay, I should be hearing God's voice. And you may hear something like, oh, go up and talk to that person. Pray for that person. Do this, do that. And, and maybe this does happen to some people. But there may be a compulsive quality. Like you need to go up to this person and pray for them and heal them. Okay, maybe you do, but maybe not. Maybe that's not the way it is. Maybe there is some other explanation. And, sometimes people may be told, okay, go up to this person, pray for them, and then the person gets healed. Well, maybe you just really believed that God was with you in that moment, and you really have faith because you were stepping out in faith. Maybe it's the faith that healed the person, because you were going, oh, why should I talk to this person? Maybe God's telling me, okay, I'm going to believe that God's doing this. Well, maybe it's not that God was actually telling you that. Maybe it's that you were just kind of stepping out in faith and God works through faith. You know what I'm saying? So And I'm not saying that God doesn't speak to some people or give those kind of inspirations, but I'm just saying that sometimes we could become compulsive about this. I think a lot of people could become compulsive about this, whether it's in a faith-based context or people who are in a more like a New Age spirituality context can almost feel like they're channeling things. You know, you can feel like you're trying to get guidance and like listening for things, but really you're probably just hearing your own unconscious mind. And a lot of these circumstances. So because the thing is, you know, and I'm not saying that's a good thing. Don't do those things in a New Age context. I'm not saying that's good. But I'm just saying how these things can work. And a lot of times it's because we're looking for that guidance. We want that certainty. We're putting that pressure, you know. So it's not always the intrusive thought is something that we, you know, something that we don't want. It could be something that we kind of do want, but it's something that seems like it comes from outside. Like, okay, I want to hear God's voice. I want God to tell me I could be a priest. I want God to tell me I can marry that person. I want God to give me confirmation that I'm on the right track. Okay, I think I'm getting confirmation of that because I'm hearing this voice or I'm getting this emotion or this feeling that's coming up. And, you know, and then sometimes we could say, oh, I'm not getting this feeling. God must not be on my side. I must not have peace. I must not have this. You know, it's this thing where, again, it's like the unconscious mind is being put, you know, we're putting pressure on it and we're getting these other feelings as a result because we're putting pressure on the unconscious. And either way, what's happening is, you know, there's some way in which we are really over-focusing on our feelings. And I think that what I want people to see from this video is the idea that we can have both good and bad intrusive thoughts. We can have thoughts that seem that we want that are intrusive, but we just need them to kind of come from God, you know. But we can have also thoughts that we don't want. We can have thoughts that match with us that are intrusive thoughts, or we can have, maybe it's not the best word. Maybe intrusive isn't the best word. We could probably call them like bubble up thoughts or something, like thoughts that kind of come into our mind. They seem to bubble up or arrive as inspirations, but they're really just things bubbling up out of the unconscious. So I think it's very important to understand this dynamic, because if you've ever struggled with scrupulosity or any of these type of things, you may be compulsively looking for guidance from God, and you may be getting it. You may be thinking you're talking to God and actually just talking to your unconscious mind. And so the problem is then we can fall into this kind of spiritual delusion, and that can be very just distressing. You know, there's articles, I'm sure you can find them on the internet, about, you know, having a kind of trying to hear God's voice when we have OCD. And this is something that I'm not necessarily saying you have OCD, like in a clinical context, diagnosing anybody, there's anything like that. I'm just saying there is this way in which we can feel both positive and negative intrusions into our mind as a result of the pressures we're putting on our unconscious. And that these things may not necessarily be inspirations of God, and maybe not even necessarily temptations from the devil. It may just be something that's going on psychologically. And it doesn't mean that obviously God and demons aren't at work in our lives, but I think we want to have this perspective because this perspective will help us understand our experience and gain greater freedom from what we're going through. Because sometimes, you know, we can think that we could even think that the devil is trying to throw things into our mind. We could be horrified. Why is the devil in making these intrusions come into my mind? Why is the devil making me try to force me to like say some horrible blasphemous thought? Why is this going on? Instead, what it is you just don't want to think that thought, or you're just really scared, or you just think the devil is making you do it. And so it's like you're getting even more freaked out. So the thing is, I think sometimes we can even probably, I don't doubt that we could probably give ourselves symptoms of possession in a way. Like we could say, oh, I'm having this feeling. That means the devil is in charge of me. That means this is what's going on. It may just be that we're fighting with our unconscious, and because we're pushing things away, they seem to be coming up at us. Like if you try to say, oh, I don't want to think that thought. Oh, I don't want to think that thought to curse God. The devil is making me think this thought. And then maybe somebody in pressure, you know, will give into thoughts like that. Like, so for example, you know, even Martin Luther described this thing. He said, you know, sometimes he would try to get the devil to go away by he talked about this, by sinning. Like he would do some type of a sin, and then like that would be the way he would mock the devil. Like, I mean, but that's not a good way to kind of break out of this OCD cycle. People like John Bunyan spoke about, you know, whenever he would think of a sin, all of a sudden he would have to like try to restrain himself from a sin because he would just, because of his OCD type feelings, what he would do is like he would have like a temptation to blasphemy, for example. He'd have to like clamp his hand over his mouth to not shout out the blasphemy. But you could see he didn't want to do that. It was that he was pushing so hard mentally against his unconscious mind that it seemed to be rising up. This impulse seemed to be rising up because of how much it was not wanted and how much it was feared. And sometimes we can attribute that to the devil, just as in the same way we can like want to be told that we're going to marry this person, or want to be told that we should be a priest, or want to get this certain guidance, or feel that we have this guidance and we could attribute it to God. So you can kind of attribute to God or to the devil what we're really just kind of squishing. We're just trying to say, don't say that, and the brain is saying that. It's all in our own head. And so, we really want to try to get a perspective on the fact that this interrelationship between our conscious and unconscious mind can account for these phenomena. And if we do this, then we can spare ourselves a lot of spiritual delusion. Because the thing is, we can't really be 100% where a thought's coming from. Obviously, the devil is rooting for anything that confuses us or tempts us. And obviously, God wants anything that's going to lead us to clarity and to love of others. But beyond that, we want to be a little bit more flexible with this kind of discernment of things or where things are coming from, and not have perspectives that are going to add to our problems by making us think that, oh no, the devil's making me do this, and the devil's making me want to do this, and then being like, all right, I'll give in, whatever. Like I don't know what to do because this is too much pressure. I'll give in to whatever the devil wants. Or this is like because the thing is, some people like like Martin Luther, like I described, or Bunyan, you could imagine him just being like, okay, I let go, I'm just gonna curse God, because I can't do it. I mean, obviously it's bad, but it's like, but you could see the anguish. And the thing is, you can have the person get into so much Bunyan could have gotten into so much guilt, if he did that. So I really think that we need to understand these unconscious mind and conscious mind dynamics so that we don't put too much pressure, positive or negative, on our unconscious mind, and then get these false positives of inspirations or temptations. So hopefully that's helpful in making sense of the mind. So hopefully that is beneficial to you.